Hello again, Yaksamash, and welcome back to Wrench Reads, Trilogy of Morgalla, Diary of a Lonely Demon, number 16. It's been a good week for me, and, well, I'm ready to get back into critiquing this book. Well, because there's some things that have come to light about John and about some of the other people in the quote-unquote hater community that it's made a couple things a bit more clear. I'm not going to go into it because it's drama, and no drama. I'll leave that up to the dramatists. But I'm actually going to do something a little different today. Of course, I'm going to be doing the reading, but I'm going to be skipping a section in the book. I reread it last night before I actually got started, with what I was going to do, essentially do all my critiques. And I found that this section was really rather meaningless. There's a couple of things that John kind of wrote in there that he thought would make it important, but in the basis of this book, because we know essentially what's coming, because it's telegraphed so heavily, there really is no need to go through it again. It does clarify a few things, so I'm going to comment on those first, and then I'm going to do my actual reading. The actual reading is back into Jasper's perspective, and it kind of shows as to why he's a bit of a antisocial, authority-hating person. But, well, we'll get to that. But for now, this is what kind of happens in this section. And it was set up by the last reading that I did in number 15. It's essentially Morgalla going to a meeting with the generals of Hell. In this meeting, she is giving her report on Earth. And it actually mentions it earlier on in this chapter, where essentially Earth is not worth the time of the demons to invade, because they don't have enough resources or whatever the demons want. And that's more or less it. Morgalla reports to the demon generals that Earth is not a planet worth their time. There's a couple of different things. There's mentions of... Let's see. He restates that Delilah's grandmother was a dragon, which is unnecessary. He gives Delilah another lengthy description, even though we already have what she looks like. Let's see. Part of her was... we get a bit of an idea of Delilah being jealous of Morgalla because she is Zorach's blood. Let's see. A couple of points where Morgalla is essentially... or where there's italics, there's thoughts going through the head of someone, we don't know who. Vex makes an appearance talking about a world, and it gives a bit of the information of Hell's armies. It doesn't tell us what they use. It doesn't tell us what their armies are consistent of. It doesn't tell us anything about that. It just says they're essentially talking about another planet, and Vex is describing it, and they're talking about losses, and yeah. There's implications that, let's see. Yes, they are aware of other dimensions and have defenses against such invaders, which implies multidimensional travel, which is not just aliens, which we know demons are at the moment. There's implications that Hell is itself another realm of existence instead of just a planet again. They say that the humans are sharing technology, which is okay. How? He doesn't explain it. There's some grandstanding. It's just silly. There's a mention of weapons of mass destruction. Anyone who was at the reading this past Friday would know that, okay, demons have some idea of weapons of mass destruction, assuming, of course, that they're nuclear weapons. And we have an indication that really kind of tears the concept of John's hell away from the theological concept of hell, like Christianity. Yes, they are aware of hell, or should I say that the majority of them believe in hell, essentially implying that, okay, the belief in hell and the knowledge that this hell is real they're two completely separate things. Many people there think that if you're bad in life, your soul goes to hell when you die. Oh, it's one of those places, which there's an implication there. I'm not going to dig into it because it would be long and long-winded, and it wouldn't be productive. So, but yeah, that's it. And then Morgalla sits down, and the section's over after Morgalla does her talk. So, anyway, on to my actual reading. Let's get started. And this starts after an actual section break. Italics. Falls in full swing. Autumn always depressed Jasper, especially in this town. He took the long way to work. Though it added 10 minutes, the roads were in better condition and saved wear on his car. The other path might be quicker, but the roads were horrible, littered with potholes. It was Jasper's turn to drive this morning with Andy riding shotgun. Andy was talking about something, but Jasper wasn't paying attention. He usually caught half of what Andy said because he had to pay attention to driving, but lately he had more on his mind. The radio was playing. Currently it was on a news break about the latest thing that President Flesh was doing. Neither of them gave any attention to the sound bites. They arrived at the Springdale Public Library. Like many things within the town, it was old and run down. The parking lot was filled with holes and cracks, and the sidewalk wasn't any better. The brick was crumbling and left red dust wherever it fell, and the building didn't even have a ramp for the handicapped. They walked through the back door, an employee entrance, since the building wasn't open yet. Jasper and Andy each put on a fake smile to deal with their baby boomer coworkers. They found it ironic that it was cloudy both outside and inside. "Hi, Barbara," they said as they walked past one desk, only to get no reply whatsoever. "How you doing?" Jasper stopped to ask, but still got no reply. "Have a great day." They ignored her foul mood and walked on to the break room for their morning coffee. It might not have been as good as a coffee house, but at least it was free, and in their condition they had to be fiscally responsible. "There's no way that woman was at Woodstock," Andy muttered. "Yeah, tell me about it," Jasper replied. He still did his best to prevent anyone else from bringing his good mood down, even if it was completely fake. Another familiar face entered the break room, full coffee mug in hand. "Hi, Ron. How you doing?" How you doin'? Jasper asked with a genuine smile. "Shitty," was the reply he got. As Ron walked off, Andy had to hold back the laughter. Even though Ron completely disrespected his friend, the situation was humorous to him. Ron was actually closer to their age, but years of alcohol and smoking had taken their toll on him. In his youth, he was skinny, but his horrible diet had made him balloon up to over 200 pounds. "I'm going to stop asking," Jasper said. "Yeah, that's the only reply you ever get from that jerk." "Hey, Walker," Ron yelled from down the hall. "Sherry needs you in the office pronto." "Can it wait?" Andy replied with frustration, for he looked forward to the coffee first. "What does the word pronto mean to you?" Ron replied with aggravation. "Okay, fine." Andy was angry, but held back the urge to call Ron a name to his face. "Sorry, dude," Jasper said. Jasper continued on to the break room. He was glad to see that he was the only one there. Some peace and quiet before what was sure to be another rough day. The aroma of Columbia's finest beans flowed through Jasper's nose. That and the warmth of the coffee cup were the greatest of emotional therapy. There was no better way to start what could be as difficult a day as the day before. He tried his best to think positively and keep that mindset for the entire day. "Davis!" a voice bellowed. Italics. Of course, it was too good to last. He had noticed Wilbur walk into the break room. You would think that someone with bones as old as his would make more of a creaking noise. Jasper did not want to snap out of his aroma-induced trance, but he'd rather not be yelled at anymore. "Davis!" Wilbur yelled again. Jasper turned to look at him, a man of at least 80 pounds and an entire head shorter. The man's age had brought a hump to his back, and his face was contorted into a permanent scowl. His bones were so feeble that Jasper was afraid to shake his hand the day they met out of fear of breaking it. It took less than a day for Jasper to learn to hate him. "Yes?" Jasper asked, holding back every bit of frustration. "I left papers on your desk," the old man snapped. "I want it done by the end of the day." "How many papers?" I'll come back to it. Jasper asked out of curiosity. Wilbur was about to turn and leave, but Jasper's question, stupid in the old man's opinion, made him stop and give a look that clearly implied, "I can't believe you just said that." "You don't have to worry about that," Wilbur yelled. "Just do it." "Sure thing," Jasper muttered, his voice soft. Then he took a sip of his coffee. "Watch yourself or I'll find more work for you," Wilbur sneered at him and left. Jasper rolled his eyes and shook his head in frustration. Normally he would state his frustration to the man who was difficult to work for, but he was afraid that if he raised his voice higher than a whisper, he might scare the man to death. Literally. He could talk to Sherry, their mutual boss, but that was hopeless too. She did not want anything to do with the problem. The Springdale Public Library was a place run by the greedy, lazy, and unethical. Years of dust covered the tops of the bookshelves. Outdated materials, including an old encyclopedia set 12 years old, sat among the crumbling reference section. There were history books that didn't tell how the Cold War ended, and technical journals that didn't know what the internet was. Patches of carpet were worn to the floor, and some fluorescent lights flickered and were in need of replacing. Tables meant for study were scarred with people's initials, and the undersides were littered with a few decades' worth of gum. Years of abuse had taken their toll on the library. Working in a place such as this was a match made in Jasper's worst nightmare. He went to his desk behind circulation, and, sure enough, there was a pile of paperwork at least 2 feet high. "Oh, come on!" This is on italics. "Oh, come on! You're too freaking old to know how to use a computer properly, so I have to do most of your work?" His fist clenched for a brief moment as if he were about to explode, but he sighed and his shoulders slumped. In his mind, there was nothing he could do. Jasper sat at the desk. It faced Wellington's office. Wilbur Wellington must be the old man's name. And he could see him from the side, staring at his computer. It looked like the old man... It took the old man half the day just to type a memo. Jasper looked up from his work every now and then to sneak a peek at Wilbur. Again, he was at his computer, just staring at the screen. Wilbur Wellington, the man who made other workaholics look lazy... That's a sentence, I'm sorry. Wilbur Wellington, the man who made other workaholics look lazy. It was common knowledge that he had served in one of the major wars. He said it was World War I, but many speculated that it was actually... He said it was World War II, but many speculated it was actually World War I. He claimed once to know Eisenhower, but someone made the joke that he actually knew Lincoln. Wilbur was there at the construction of the library many years ago, but again, jokes and speculation ran amok. His desk was the first thing in, and he worked at the same time as the construction workers, one woman joked. They built the library around him. These jokes and mockery would be all over the break room. Jasper would never join in when he first started working there. He thought it was disrespectful to talk that way about someone behind his or her back. It only took a couple of hours on the first day of work before his pity for the man died a mercy death. He did not join in the jokes, though, for someone might get him in trouble. Who knew working in a library was so cutthroat? Jasper came across another file that confused him. The numbers for the budget really weren't adding up, from his perspective. He was by no means an accountant, and staring at numbers all day gave him a headache. All these records really should be in the hands of Wilbur due to his authority. He got up and walked through the open door of Wilbur's office. He did not speak out of fear of startling the old man. With file in hand, he walked up, hoping that his boss would notice him out of the corner of his eyes. Mr. Wellington, Jasper said in a soft voice, but there was no movement or sound from the old man. Damn it, he's fallen italics. Damn it, he's fallen asleep at the computer again. Mr. Wellington? Jasper asked, again, just a tad louder. The last time he woke the old man, he regretted it. He startled Wilbur, though it was unintentional. Jasper thought the unthinkable, but he had to be sure. His hand, gentle as could be, touched Wilbur's shoulder. The old man slumped forward and his face fell flat against the computer screen. That's the section. That's it for the reading. Made a nice dent in the section with that skip, but time to go back. Couple things. The first thing that I really didn't notice my first reading, and I'm noticing it more here, is just how, I'd almost say ageist, that this writing is. Jasper says essentially a number of times that he never joins in with the making fun of Wilbur, but in the same respect, he thinks all these really horrible things about this old man, someone who is obviously a hard worker, someone who knows his job. And John does say on a couple of occasions that he is a very hard worker, yet he's giving Jasper all of his work or something. But Jasper is emotionally fragile when it comes to this man. Wilbur comes in, says, "Hey, work's on your desk, get to it." Instead of saying, "Yes, sir," he says, it's the cliche of, you say jump, I say how high. Instead of saying how high, Jasper says how many papers. It doesn't matter. It's your job. Go do your job. Obviously, Wilbur has had this kind of problem with him before, in which case things are probably, let's see. I left papers on your desk, the old man snapped. I want it done by the end of the day. That's your job. Go do it. Instead of saying, instead of being essentially stupid about it, saying how many papers, you should say, "Yes, sir. Is there anything else I should know?" And then go get to work. It makes me think that Jasper himself is causing his own problems, because Wilbur is obviously doing what he needs to do to keep this place up and running, because he's been there for so long, he knows most about what needs to be done. He also makes a couple of snaps at this lady who's upset at the very beginning, who's in a bad mood, talking about the baby boomer generation, Woodstock, etc. This entire section just reeks of ageism, where essentially anyone older than you is always in a bad mood, or is always worthless, or doesn't do the work that they're supposed to be doing, even though John himself says they are. So it's not only is it kind of contradictory, it's ageist, in my opinion. Let's see, where did it say? Jasper and Andy each put on a fake smile to deal with their baby boomer coworkers. What does that mean? I mean, why do you have to put on a fake smile? All the baby boomers I know are incredibly friendly. They've lived their life. They're experienced. Yeah, they may be a little older, but they're friendly. They're great. They're awesome people to work with. What? There's something in this library that makes these people so mean. I have to imagine, because we never get the other side of the argument, I have to assume that it's something that Jasper's done, because we have no indication otherwise. Why would these people be mean at someone, and not just one either? All the people he seems to run into in this library are mean to him. Ron, the lady at the door, do we get her name? Barbara. Ron, Barbara, Wilbur. And we'll find out Sherry as well, are all mean. Just to John, and we don't see them interacting with any of the other employees. Just John, I knew I would make that mistake again, Jasper and Andy, the two people who are supposedly, viewed positively in this book. Both John and Andy are displayed kind of negatively, or they're dealt with negatively by these coworkers, which implies to me, because you never see them interacting with each other, for instance, you never see them interacting with with each other. It implies to me that Andy and Jasper are doing something wrong, or they are essentially what academicians like to refer to as dead wood. I don't think I have to explain what that means. Again, the Barbara, no explanation as to the foul mood. He did his best to prevent anyone else from bringing his good mood down, even if it was completely fake. That's completely unnecessary. If he doesn't have a bad mood, if he has a false good mood, he's obviously not in a good mood. Bringing it down is meaningless here. I don't want to say I almost want to say it's contradictory. Like, oh, I'm in a good mood, but I'm really not. Okay, it makes no sense, and it doesn't add anything to the section. And it kind of shows that Jasper is a duplicitous douchebag because he's fake all the time. His good mood is fake. Hiya, Ron. How are you doing? Jasper asked with a genuine smile. He just said that his good mood is not real. So this genuine smile is not genuine. Shitty was the reply he got. Instead of, and this is, hi Ron, how you doing? Jasper asked with a genuine smile. Shitty was the reply that he got. Instead of asking, Ron, what's bothering you? Can I help? Is there something that I can do to help you to improve your mood? Instead of helping, they laugh at him, or Andy laughs at him. And because Andy's is essentially an extension of the Jasper character, Jasper laughs at him as well. It doesn't say that either, but that's what I'm reading into it. Also, there's a little bit of description of this Ron character. He smoked and drank, and now he's fat. There's nothing of substance to this character, and it's John's writing. John's writing, everybody. Ugh. Right. And again, the same thing happens with Andy that we saw with Jasper in his interactions with Wilbur. Hey, Walker, Ron yelled from down the hall. Sherry needs you in the office pronto. Can it wait? Andy replied. What does the word pronto mean to you? Ron replied with aggravation. Okay, fine. Andy was angry, but held back the urge to call Ron a name to his face. He's your superior. You do what he says. This is kind of what I was talking about I've mentioned this before. I mentioned it in this video. I've mentioned it in the live readings. John has a significant problem when it comes to authority. Like, instead of, okay, this is my job. My job is to be at the beck and call and do these duties assigned to me by my boss. When his boss decides to actually call on him for his job, I'm going to get angry. I'm going to call the person who's expecting me to do my job a name. Or want to, if nothing else. Now, I'm not saying that all authority is good, either. But the authority in this is not painted as anything other than, doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're doing their jobs. Now, if John had written this a little bit better, if he had written it differently, if he had given some kind of context to the interactions between the workers, Wilbur talking to Sherry, they're obviously, crotchety. Wilbur is getting shit from the top, from Sherry. That's what causes his mean attitude. And then Wilbur, in respect to that, gives shit to Ron, who gives shit to Andy, who then it's essentially a cascading effect down from the top. If the boss is unhappy, everyone else is unhappy. But we don't have that. We don't have any explanation if that's actually what's happening. So yeah. And the explanation of why Jasper dislikes Wilbur is stupid. It's let's see, his bones. Oh, and again, he goes back into this ageist crap. Jasper turned to look at him, a man of at least 80 pounds and an entire head shorter, which that's just a poor way of saying he's a head shorter than me and weighs 80 pounds less. It's poorly constructed. The man's age had brought a hump to his back, and his face was contorted into a permanent scowl. That's silly. His bones were so feeble that Jasper was afraid to shake his hand the day they met out of fear of breaking it. That might be why Jasper lost Wilbur's respect right off the bat. It is respectful. It is courteous, even if you think you're going to hurt this man, to shake his hand gently. Be respectful of this man. Maybe if Jasper had actually shown him some respect in the beginning, Wilbur would be showing him some respect right now. But again, I'm reading something into it that it's implied by the writing, but it's never said. So yeah. And this gets into why I believe that there's a very specific type of writing that this would work with. Like, essentially, you're literally describing what is happening. You're literally telling someone that something's happening, instead of writing it into the story, writing it into the narrative. And that's only really good for long-winded descriptions of something. For instance, the Springdale Public Library was a place run by the greedy, lazy, and unethical. Okay, John's told us that the place is run by the greedy, the lazy, and the unethical, even though Wilbur works hard. And it's actually said in here that Wilbur works really hard. There's no indication that anyone's lazy. We don't actually see that in the actions of the people. Unethical? According to whom? According to John, who doesn't, who's not top dog, who's not in a position of authority, or Jasper, not John. It's silly, and so this section, which was essentially meant to make you hate John's superiors or the people he works with, falls flat on its face. Working in a place such as this was a match made in Jasper's worst nightmare. Get a different job. Find another fucking job. Pardon my French. Find another job. Don't just... And we find out in the next book that this is actually relatively close to another town. Jasper could find another job. Mobility is not as difficult as a lot of people might think. You save up a little bit of money, you move to a new town. Especially if you have your own car. It's incredibly easy to do. So... more ageist crap. Oh, come on, you're too freaking old to know how to use a computer properly, so I have to do most of your work? Question mark. And then, of course, which is not true, because Jasper, or the narrative itself, says Wilbur's a hard worker and he's been there a very long time. Unless I'm misreading that. Wilbur, this is the section that made me think that this guy is obviously a really good worker. Or a hard worker, if nothing else. Wilbur Wellington. The man who made other workaholics look lazy. That doesn't imply lazy. It implies that Wilbur is a hard worker. And then there are jokes, and then John outlines the jokes of the people toward Wilbur Wellington, which is... If John knows these jokes... If Jasper knows these jokes, he actually cares, he actually respects this man, he would help to stand up for it. He would help to stop it. But obviously not. There's no respect between Jasper and Wilbur Wellington because of something that Wilbur has done or does. And again, and I'll say it again because it bears repeating, there's never any indication that or of the essentially the opposing story to this viewpoint. It's always from Jasper's viewpoint. Everyone's bad. Anyone in a position of authority is bad in this section. And it makes very, very little sense. Jasper came across, and this is the last thing I'm going to point out, because this telegraphs something that comes up later on, after Jasper gains his quote-unquote powers. Jasper came across another file that confused him. The numbers for the budget weren't adding up from his perspective. And then he goes on to tell us that he's not an accountant. It's meant to portray that someone's skimming off the top. There is corruption. It's meant to imply that someone is corrupt in this library, someone's skimming off the top, fraudulently taking money from the library's funds or something. But this narrative is completely shot in the foot by what John says here. The numbers for the budget really weren't adding up. He was by no means an accountant, and staring at the numbers all day gave him a headache, which implies that he's in no position to actually talk about the numbers. He's in no position to actually say, well, the library's corrupt. So the whole thing about Springfield Public Library being lazy, unethical, and corrupt is purely from Jasper's point of view, and it has no indication of truth to it. So the entire narrative of this section completely falls flat. And as I said, flat on its face, much like Wilbur slumping against the computer screen, dead. That's it. That's the whole cap of this entire section. Wilbur's dead. Everyone's bad at my work. Everyone hates Wilbur. Wilbur dies. But with that, I'm done. thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, rate, comment, subscribe. All relevant links are in the info box below. With that, na zlorano, na zdravie. Peace.